said the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. I'm a big believer in Jalen Hurts. I think when it comes to fantasy football, he's a top 5 quarterback. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're 100% right with that. Given his rushing ability, given the fact that they brought in a superstar receiver in A.J. Brown, you got Devonta Smith in his second year, Kenneth Gainwell catching passes out of the backfield in his second year, and then a great tight end in Dallas Goedert.
But I know this week's a big week for fantasy football drafts. If you're like me, your leagues are drafting this week. I've got one tomorrow night. And here to chat with us about it is Sports Illustrated's very own Bill Enright, who drops the hammer when it comes to fantasy football and wagering over on SI.com. Of course, my fellow Jersey Shore brethren. Good to see you on the beach. We ran into each other out of randomness a couple of weeks ago on the beach, Bill, but buckle up. Summer's over. Football season's on the horizon. And welcome into the Football Playbook show, man. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely, Rick. It was great seeing you on the beach. I wish we got to hang a little bit more, but we both had kids chasing us around and pulling us in one way and the other way. I was trying to do some fantasy football research on the beach. Nice, relaxing atmosphere.
It never works
when you have a 6-year-old and a 7-month-old. That's not exactly feasible.
No, I know. I try to read my Phil Steele magazine all summer long on the beach, but it just doesn't happen with the 4-year-old. So, hey, we got it in, though. That's all that counts. And the weather held out because I'm still here at the Jersey Shore. It's raining today. It held out for the Labor Day weekend. And listen, it's a big week for fantasy football drafts. So I wanted to pop you on here because I need a little bit of help. I can't keep up with so much day to day. I just saw like Alan Lazard might be out now for week 1 with the Packers. We'll ask you who the timeshare play is in Green Bay. But first off, we're very heavy on the Philadelphia contingent here. So I want to start off with the Eagles. I said the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. I'm a big believer in Jalen Hurts. I think when it comes to fantasy football, he's a top 5 quarterback. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're 100% right with that. Given his rushing ability, given the fact that they brought in a superstar receiver in A.J. Brown, you got Devonta Smith in his second year, Kenneth Gainwell catching passes out of the backfield in his second year, and then a great tight end in Dallas Goedert, who I think outside of fantasy, what Goddard does on the field, he is a top 5 tight end. Now, he doesn't get the amount of targets or the passing game opportunities, but what he does in terms of blocking and helping out with that rushing attack as well, certainly talent-wise, Dallas Goedert fits that prototypical what you want from a tight end. I do kind of downgrade him a little bit in fantasy. Not a lot. He's still in my top 8, but I think the amount of targets, the amount of opportunities that Goddard is going to see will be somewhat consistent to make him a TE1 in fantasy, but not one of those elite options, right? He's not going to be like a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle, a Kyle Pitts, who probably will see over 100 targets this year. But you brought up Jalen Hurts. Our colleague at Sports Illustrated, Albert Breer, put out a rave review about him, saying his accuracy improved this offseason, his pocket awareness improved this offseason. And I'm with you. I think he is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL when it comes to fantasy football because rushing. The rushing ability that quarterbacks have, you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at Kyler Murray, or you look at a guy like Josh Allen, even Patrick Mahomes, I think is a very underrated rusher as a quarterback. These guys typically perform a lot better because of that rushing prowess compared to pocket passers like a Stafford or Joe Burrow or even someone like a Tom Brady.
No, you make a good point. And I think he had like 21 touchdown passes last year, but 5 or 6 were called back due to penalty or callbacks. And I think he had 10 rushing touchdowns. So, I'm putting Jalen in for 35 touchdowns, both passing and rushing this year. But let me ask you this, because a lot of people are kind of curious. What trends have you seen? Stay with the Eagles here. Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown? Which receiver's coming off the board first in fantasy drafts?
Oh, A.J. Brown's going in the top 3 rounds, easily as a top 12 wide receiver. And I think that's warranted. There's better value with Devonta Smith, given that he's going much later in drafts, 7th, 8th, 9th round in some PPR formats. Yeah, pretty late, right? And this is a guy that had a really good rookie season. I think the fantasy players are a little bit worried. Okay, well, The Eagles were a very run-heavy team in 2021. They bring in A.J. Brown. What is really going to be left over for a guy like Devonta? So I love the value of Devonta Smith. I've actually preferred taking him instead of drafting an A.J. Brown in the third round. And that's not to say that A.J. Brown, it's not warranted to take him that early. I just think given the value, given the price, given the return on investment, Smith is a much better option at that price tag.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if Devonta Smith leads this team in receiving because of how much attention is going to be paid to A.J. Brown. And then you do have to account for Goddard underneath as a red zone weapon. So, hey, Devonta Smith may have this one-on-one coverage opportunity to really take advantage of that. So that's fascinating. We're going to get into some of your fantasy sleepers in just a second. I know the Eagles' backfield is kind of a committee approach. Do you kind of shy away from that? Is Miles Sanders the guy? I tend to think Kenneth Gainwell is the best running back on the team. He didn't have a great training camp, but when Sanders goes down, it seems like Boston Scott gets elevated to the starter role and Gainwell kind of remains the backup there. How do you make sense of that Eagles backfield when it comes to fantasy?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a headache, right? First of all, Miles Sanders comes out and says, don't draft me in your fantasy league because I don't care. Which, okay, fine. I don't expect NFL players to care about what fantasy players think of them. But whenever a running back comes out and says, hey, don't draft me, that throws up some warning signs. Listen, he had a great yards per carry stat last year, but he just didn't get the volume. And I think when it comes to running backs, you want a back like a Najee Harris that could get close to 400 touches this year. Derrick Henry, same thing. Miles Sanders will probably have half of that, right? So whenever you do have a back in a committee, you have to downgrade them to a certain level. If you're drafting Miles Sanders as your running back 3, maybe your flex, fantastic. If you're drafting him as your running back 2, I might be a little bit more worried about that. But I'm with you. I do think Kenneth Gainwell in the PPR format might be about a few spots behind on my rankings than Miles Sanders and costs, maybe a 10th or 11th pick where Sanders is going in the 6th or 7th round. So it's a little bit of a balance thing with the Eagles backfield. And you mentioned Boston Scott. I really wouldn't use him unless they're playing the Giants. I think he has like 9 touchdowns against the Giants in 4 games or something crazy like that. So to me, I am staying away from the Eagles backfield. I love their passing attack, love Jalen Hurts, love their receiving options, including Goddard. But for their running backs, I am shying away from drafting them.
All right, let's get into some guys you like. People are drafting all week long. We got Bill Enright here checking in, sportsillustrated.com, fantasy guru, wagering expert. What do you got here? Give us some guys we should know for our upcoming draft. Who are some value plays? Who are some guys you like?
Yeah, I mean, if I was talking to you about a month ago, I probably would have signaled Dameon Pierce, the running back for the Houston Texans, but his ADP has just absolutely skyrocketed since the beginning of the summer. When I started drafting right around 4th of July weekend, he was going in the 11th, 12th round. His ADP has jumped up to the 4th or 5th round. I do think there's value in adding him, but not necessarily at that price tag. The draft equity that you need to invest in order to get the rookie for Houston, it's just way too expensive now. So I have to pivot a little bit, right? Because this happens every summer. You draft early, and then all of a sudden the hype starts, the groundswell, if you will, starts coming in, and that's certainly what happened with Dameon Pierce. But in terms of other running backs that I like that you can get late, I think Amir Abdullah for the Las Vegas Raiders is going to have a really big role in that passing attack. That's a late, very late round pick, maybe even the last round, which doesn't cost you a lot. It's not going to break the bank. If he doesn't pan out, who cares? But I do like Abdullah to have a passing down role,
which makes sense because look,
I'm very, very excited about.
Look at how McDaniels used James White. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, exactly. I like that a lot.
I'm really big on that entire offense as a whole. I think people are down on Hunter Renfrow just because they brought in Devontae Adams. I'd make the argument, just like you did with A.J. Brown coming in and defenses focusing on him, that's going to free up Devonta Smith. I think the same thing's going to happen to Hunter Renfrow. And if you're in a PPR league, I can certainly see him getting 90 catches this year for 1,100 yards. Maybe he finds the end zone 7 to 9 times. I'm really excited about this Raiders offense. I have a lot of player props, season-long player props for the Raiders offense, and I have a lot of the Raiders on my fantasy team as well. I mentioned Abdullah. I mentioned Hunter Renfrow. If you want to punt on tight end and not take one until the very, very last round, I would maybe take a shot at Hayden Hurst for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's not being drafted in the top 20 at the position. We saw what CJ Uzomah did for that team last year. He was a pretty consistent tight end for them, especially when it comes to fantasy football. Broke up a couple big runs and got into the end zone. Think about that passing attack. They got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon out of the backfield. Hayden Hurst is going to have plenty of very advantageous matchups with some of the linebackers or strong safeties that might have to cover him a little bit. And Joe Burrow has shown a proclivity to target his tight end. So if you neglect the tight end position on your fantasy draft, Hayden Hurst, again, not going to break the bank. He won't cost you anything if you have to cut him after 2 weeks, but he could creep up into that top 15, top 12 area.
Yeah, if you don't get one of those top tight ends, why not? That's worth a flyer. Anytime I can get me a piece of that Joe Burrow timeshare, who, oh, by the way, I picked the Eagles for the Super Bowl. Bengals are my AFC pick, and I think Burrow's in for a monster season. So anytime I can get a timeshare of that, especially in the late round, you're saying you could possibly get him in the last round of your draft. Why not? Worth a roll of the dice. Let me ask you this, because anytime I can get a slice of that Aaron Rodgers timeshare, I want a piece of that pie too. But it's kind of a question mark. Lazard, I don't know what his status is, but there's really no clear-cut wide receiver number one in Green Bay. I mean, is this a avoid at all costs, or is there someone here that you like with the Packers?
It's interesting with Lazard because at the beginning of the summer, Aaron Rodgers came out saying, hey, it's Allen Lazard's time. He's been a grinder for the first couple of years of his career. Devonta Adams is now gone. It's Lazard's time to take over that spotlight. And I think the hype almost got out of control for him, similar to Dameon Pierce. Allen Lazard was going very early in drafts, 5th, 6th round. He's fallen off a little bit, given what Matt LaFleur said just last week, signaling that the wide receivers, Rodgers is going to pass the ball around. He's going to spread it around to a lot of the different options. There might not be that elite wide receiver one that we'd expect to get or that we've seen with Aaron Rodgers and Devonta Adams over the year. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't expect Allen Lazard to become Devonta Adams overnight. I do think Lazard ends up leading the team in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. But I do think that both running backs, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, are going to have a much bigger role in that passing game as well. We'll see what happens with the two rookies, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. Watson really missed a lot of training camp with a knee injury. Their tight end is also coming back from I believe it was an ACL rehabilitation this offseason. So Rodgers will still get his stats. He just might be spreading it around a little bit. But I do think Allen Lazard, if you have to take one, he's the one to take.
All right, there you have it. He's Bill Enright. Make sure you go follow him at Bill Enright. Of course, SI.com. Bill, I know you got to go. You've got a heart out here. Any parting shots, last second advice, anything else you want to get off your chest?
I would bank on the Colts win total, the Raiders win total. And if you want to take a flyer, NFC East champions, Philadelphia Eagles, I got them at plus 250 earlier in the spring, right around the NFL draft. Then they made that big trade for A.J. Brown. I think they're at maybe plus 175. No team has repeated the NFC East champions division title, I believe, for the last 5 years. So throw out the Commanders, throw out the Giants. It's going to come down to the Eagles and the Cowboys. Yeah. And I think given the fact that, hey, the Eagles were just as good at the end of the last season as the Dallas Cowboys were, I'd throw some money down on the Eagles being NFC East champions. You get a nice return on your investment. Right now on SI Sportsbook, they're plus 185.
I love it. I told you I was conducting the train here on the JAKIB Sports channel. I got Bill on board. He's riding shotgun with me. We're riding this bad boy into Arizona. Hey, it's Ric Serritella, the Football Playbook, Bill Enright. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and close out the show. Hit that like button right after this.